I think we're in time as well. So
Fantastic. All right, good afternoon, everybody. We'll call us to order here. And Doug, you will take note of the roll.
yes.
Okay,
Could the attendee with the phone number ending in 425, could you identify yourself, please?
Good evening. This is Mary Delaney.
Hi, Mary.
hi, Mary. All right,
Do we have the Herald on here?
looks like it.
Oh, cool.
Hello, Harold Independent. Hi, Brandon. All right, so can I get a motion to approve the minutes from September 8th, please?
I'll make a motion.
The second that?
Second.
Were there any edits or any discussion on the minutes? Okay, can we get a vote to approve the minutes? All in favor, say aye. Any nay? Minutes approved. I'm gonna guess that Mary's here for a public appearance. Is that correct, Mary?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, and I don't have time to stay through the whole meeting, but I would hope that I could have a moment just to express some concerns about some issues that have come up with regard to the new purchase of the property at 4123 Monona Drive.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. As we know, that property was purchased. There wasn't a survey done. There is a possibility that there are some mounds on the property, and accordingly, that area that may contain some mounds was fenced off, and so that has been done by the city over the course of the summer. But also through the summer, and particularly in the later months of the summer, there were at least 10 vehicles at different times parked just right next to the fencing. There wasn't any explanation about the fencing, and then there hasn't been any signage to indicate people shouldn't be parking on the lawn. But it's concerning because we don't really know what's there. And, a 2-ton truck on a effigy mound could likely do a lot of damage. I've been by there lately. That traffic has subsided. I suspect that those were probably due to people meeting their friends down at the boat in that shallow area. And there isn't as much, although I have seen trucks parked more near the garden area on the lawn. But there's still no signage asking people to stay off the lawn. There isn't any signage designating parking. And as we come into winter, I don't know what this will bring in terms of people coming in using snowmobiles, ATVs. I think it's reasonable to assume that ice fishermen will be coming in there to access the lake, and I don't know where they're going to park their cars or their trucks, and whether they'd use an ATV and how they would proceed. But I'm concerned given the fact that we don't know really what's there, and that there's just moderate fencing without any description or indication of what that fencing is to protect, and there isn't any additional signage advising people about the parking and not to be on the lawn itself. What will happen to what may remain there? So I was hoping that there might be some action just to put some signs up, identifying why the fencing there's potentially, and asking people to, at least with motorized vehicles, to stay off the land, stay off the lawn.
Thank you, Mary. I have passed those concerns on to Alder Groupie and Alder Wood, and I know Alder Groupie was working on trying to get some signs. So I will follow up with her again and see if she's made any progress there. It does seem like it'd be smart to get those signs up before winter.
Yes.
Anyone else have thoughts or comments on that?
I know the trucks that are parked down by the garden are usually John Shield and the person that helps him with that garden.
Okay.
They park their trucks right alongside the garden area.
All right. Okay, thank you, Mary.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
All right, any other public appearances? Not appear to be any. So under unfinished business, item 5, we have the public hearing on certificate of appropriateness for a demolition permit for a Monona landmark structure at 4227 Winnacle Road, the Spring Haven Pagoda, case number Z-020-2021. Doug, do you want to address that? Because we had a conversation about that a little bit earlier.
Sure, I can just give an update. Obviously, this was tabled at the, this request was tabled at the September 8th meeting. And there was a recommendation made, or a motion from the commission to follow up and to get a second opinion on both the structural integrity of the pagoda, as well as the feasibility of possible restoration as well. There were a couple consultants that were recommended as folks to follow up with. And I want to thank Commission Member Chapman for being able to put us in contact with CMR. We were able to get them out. They came out and took a look at the pagoda. Sadly, it was not during a time that I was, we didn't coordinate schedules. I had asked to be present, but they came out and just inspected it. And so I wasn't able to make sure that it was, exactly what we were looking for outside of the scope of the email. So you'll have seen the letter that's included in the packet, which is dated September 21st, 2021. And so it's the one-page letter where they openly say, we're not structural engineers. They did, evaluate the feasibility of restoration, but they did not, could not share an opinion on the structural elements, which was one of the two, pieces that we were looking for. So I have been working, given that was the will of the commission, was to have a structural opinion about the safety of the pagoda as well. I have reached out and I have a Madison firm, Pierce Engineers Inc. We have a restoration group there, they're structural engineers, and so they have been coordinating with them. I couldn't get them out before this meeting, but I do have something booked for next Monday. So I'll be coordinating with them and hope to have an opinion letter, very similar, and really similar to what we were hoping to get from CMR here. And so we'll certainly take their opinion on the restoration, but I think the priority will be the structural elements. And so I'll be coordinating and we'll both be on site together to take a look at that. So I just wanted to give that update to the commission that I did follow up with CMR, but I think, and I said this in the email to the group, that I think getting that structural opinion at this point was important to do. Just as a couple other housekeeping elements to just keep you updated with. You may have seen that the Herald did run a story. I'd shared some information with Lucy and thank her for doing that. It was basically an update, to the public for where the pagoda is, where it is in the process, and putting information about this public meeting. And if this does carry forward to a subsequent meeting, I'll ask that be updated and we keep the group in the loop. Finally, the Stonebridge Park is now open. I'd encourage everybody to go down and take a look. I did work with the Parks Director to have some fencing put around. It is snow fencing at this point. And again, we will be looking to put some signage up there. Some things just letting people know why it's fenced off and just some caution signs and things like that. So we're working internally to get that done, and that'll be up within the next week or so. So that's kind of the way of an update. And I'd welcome some thoughts, but certainly my suggestion would be we wait until we get this letter and we can proceed from there. Thanks.
All right. So does anyone want to discuss that?
Doug, who's your contact at Pierce?
It's Ron Bernhagen.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think this had come from some inquiries about San Damiano previously. So we had their name on file, and just again with them being local, kind of reached out to see if we could get that opinion.
And then my other question is, did CMR,
Yes,
did they charge?
they did not. No.
Excellent, excellent. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I mean, and the letter states they came out twice as well, so I'm
Yeah.
very appreciative of them coming. I wish we could have coordinated schedules, and I could have been there, and but I do appreciate that, certainly appreciate that time and the letter. Yeah.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Comments or questions for Doug? So it seems like we should probably make a motion to table this item then at this point, would you like that?
I
Or
think-
I guess I should close the hearing.
Yes.
Okay. If there's no more further comments on the public hearing, I will close the hearing. Going once, going twice, gone. Then we'll move on to item B, consideration of action of certificate of appropriateness for the demolition permit. It seems like based on what Doug said, we're probably going to table this at this point. If anyone wants to have a discussion, we certainly can. Otherwise, if someone wants to make a motion to table this item. Or,
I think the fact that it's tabled, as long as
Oh,
we
you
don't
have
want to
it
take it
untabled.
off, or then it could remain tabled
Okay.
through to a subsequent.
okay, that's, seems
would
like
be
what
fine.
we should do. Anyone have thoughts contrary? Okay, so we'll leave that table, and then we'll move on to new business, item 6. This is a discussion and possible action on membership to a National Alliance of Preservation Commissions.
Yes, so I can just give a brief introduction here, but I'll pass it over to Commission Member Holmquist, who had suggested this, and just as maybe a discussion item here. So this was brought to our attention. I don't think either of us had really were particularly aware of this group prior to this. I did include in the packet just a couple pages from their website. A little bit of information. It appears that an annual membership would be $100 in terms of the cost. The second page, this would be the last page of the meeting packet, includes the membership benefits as well. I think there's a quarterly publication, and I think there's some training opportunities, as well as sort of an online forum that's available as well, some resources, things like that. But I just wanted to bring this to the Commission's attention. It's a possibility that we could look to join. I think that there would be possibility of it coming out of maybe the Landmarks Commission supplies budget, which we have, which is $200 a year. So there should be availability there. Alternatively, I have a professional development budget, within the planning budget that this could potentially come out of. I think from my perspective, I think there is some value here in the training, and I've already seen the State Historical Society emailing the CLGs, the certified local governments, with a couple of the trainings that they've had. But I would be interested if there's a way that we can maybe get logins for members, if that's something they're interested in, and so some of those things may be points of discussion, because I do know there's obviously a lot of trainings, a lot of entities that can be joined, but I think it's really what value both myself and the Commission can get out of it is really the discussion. So I don't know, Rebecca, if you have anything else you would like to add to that.
No, I think that's me, is it? I think you discussed it pretty well.
Take it away.
Is that me? I don't think it's me.
No, it's
No.
not.
Oh, okay.
It was your introduction.
Yay. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that, Doug. I just came across that and thought it was really interesting and to share with the group. So I think you explained it pretty well. I think it would be really beneficial for some training exercises.
Thanks.
Alternatives to training are, there is a tutorial online at the Wisconsin Historical Society for Historic Preservation Commissions. And as a matter of fact, their annual conference is coming up the next week and a half, I think. And there are It's not all historic preservation, but a component of it is, and it's all online. I think it costs like $50. And there'll be some commission programs, but they deal with local history, a broader spectrum of issues. But that might be, the tutorial that's online is free. And it would be available to everyone on the commission. If you want, I'll send you a link.
Yeah, I
that'd be
can-
great.
Cool.
I can circulate that. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you been through the tutorial? Have you-
Yeah, I helped
Yeah.
write some of it.
Okay,
So you know it's good.
It was something that the Division of Historic Preservation put together, and I used to work there, and so it was a group project. So there's one on historic preservation commissions, and then there's one on historic preservation advocacy, which is for non-commissions, for private parties. But they're both pretty good.
I was gonna ask you, Doug, do you have other resources available to you? Kind of similar that you've maybe already paid for with other professional development opportunities, or is it through the Wisconsin Historical Society or?
Yeah, I would say not necessarily paid resources.
Okay.
But certainly there's more trainings than I can attend, and
Yeah.
webinars and things like that that are often free. Yeah, I think the one that I saw already come through from this group, it was more sort of reading plans, and it was quite a general kind of 101 type of session, I think. Reading plans and maybe how they could be interpreted for, historic properties or something like that. So I think they have sort of a full spectrum. I haven't necessarily looked into what they offer specifically, but I can certainly, I think one thing here would be, is it sort of just for me, or is it for, the commission as a whole? So I can certainly reach out. I know there's some contact details here, and see if it's the sort of thing, do we get, 7 or 8 logins,
Yeah.
for example, versus just one. So I feel that for then, maybe the $100 is well spent, if it's commission-wide training. If it's just for me, it may be somewhat duplicative to other avenues that I already have. So.
I've joined these kind of memberships myself, or, through organizations I've run, and, if you don't have the time to dedicate to it, before you know it, a year is up and you're like, oh, I got nothing, or I attended one session. That would be my only concern, considering our budget's 200 and this is half of it. Not that, we don't have a long list of supplies either, but we might, maybe it'd be signage. So yeah, any other thoughts, or if he can get logins for the commission, do I feel like you would spend time there and it would be worthwhile?
I don't know, and I was gonna say, Rick, do you have to be a member of the State Historical Society to activate that free, or it's just free to anybody?
The tutorials are free to anybody.
Okay.
The preservation conference
The
would
conferences
be
are different,
$50 per
Right.
person, and it's all online.
correct?
I was just wondering, any of the other, like Blooming Grove Historical Society, anybody else, do they belong to anything like this, or do we have any track record of local groups of whether it was worth the $100 or not?
Yeah,
You'll find mostly commissions will join them because they're very specific to historic preservation commissions, not so much the historical society.
Okay.
So it's really dealing with the law
Mhm,
and
Okay.
procedure and ordinance considerations, mostly legal issues.
okay.
The one good thing from NAPC is they have that great quarterly, and some of them I use as resources, because they'll have a subject that the whole issue will be dedicated. So like demolition by neglect, which is an issue that a lot of commissions face. It's very thorny. So they'll have an issue dedicated to that. So sometimes, I know I had a full collection of them when I worked at the Historical Society. We had our own subscription. So it's a matter of sometimes of getting a back issue when you have a particular issue that you're working with. So maybe if we could just get an index of what their back catalog is, then we can know to look for it. And more often than not, the issue will be available for a $5 purchase or something like that.
Mhm.
So when we're facing an issue, then maybe we can just search for that
Yeah.
magazine.
Yeah.
That quarterly issue.
And are they paper or electronic?
That's a good question. I think it used to be all paper, and then I think they were transitioning
Okay.
to electronic. And I don't know if they made it a full transition or not.
Thanks.
Alright. So it sounds like we have a few
Yeah, I can do
questions to
some
find
digging and,
out.
yeah,
And,
come back.
yeah, so we'll discuss again next month.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, sound good? Miranda, did you want to add anything to that conversation? Okay. All right, we're moving right along here. We're on to staff updates. In the National Register nomination update.
Thanks. So first off, I'll just kind of echo some of the points about Stonebridge again. So the fencing is in place. We're working on the temporary signage. I know there had been some questions last month about the placement of the boulders and some of the signage, the existing. Both the Shirley Holmberg, the smaller one, as well as the larger pagoda, sort of the recessed plaque, they're both just off to the side of the walking path. So if you're looking, if you have the link to your back, they're just to the left of the pagoda. So very close and readable. Certainly they can be viewed from the path, and I think it's quite a nice location for them. There's some plantings that are around them already that I think will bloom pretty nicely as well. So I just wanted to update the commission, but as I said, the park is open and I certainly encourage you to go and take a look. I think the location is good, but I welcome feedback. I think certainly the smaller one could be moved, the bigger one may take some time.
Yeah.
But
We'll all get down there.
Yeah,
and get
let's all
ready
go
to
down
push.
yeah.
On a windy day.
Exactly.
As far as the National Register nomination goes, I did receive notice that the Kohl's store, the Restore building is on for State Review Board consideration in November. So I will be getting the date of that, and I'll share that with the commission when I have that.
Which nomination, I'm sorry?
The Kohl's store, the Restore building.
Oh, November.
Yes.
So
I
they're
think that-
available online, right? They do it online?
I believe they are, yes.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So I'll share any information on that with the commission. I think that's a little sooner than we were expecting.
Yeah,
Having spoken to them, I think there was a backlog, so I think that's good news. And I'll keep you all updated. All I have at the moment is that it's November, but once I get dates and information, I will share that.
And did you send out copies of that?
Yeah, there's.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so I should find it in a back.
Yes, but I'll certainly, when I have the dates, I'll send
Okay.
that. I have it all electronic again, so I can share those.
Hey,
Yeah,
Doug, this is
the
Rebecca.
meetings.
I just wanted to mention that the November date would be online because they only do 4 reviews a year and the dates are already up.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And I'll send an email with, I assume there will be some sort of, viewing link or something like that, some more information. If it is going to be held electronic, virtually, I'll send that as well for those that are interested to sort of follow along as well. I'll certainly be keeping tabs on that one. So,
You know what might be cool is that, the contractor puts together a PowerPoint to present. That's kind of a summary of the nomination.
Mhm.
Is it Tim who wrote that one?
no, this was UW Normal.
If we could get copies of those PowerPoints.
Yeah.
We could put those online.
Yeah, I definitely will look to get a copy of it. I think it'll be maybe more of an overview, than obviously the document is a little more technical and a little more detailed, but I think the presentation might give a
Yeah.
higher level.
The document is got a lot of language specific to the National Register process, but the PowerPoints are very accessible.
Certainly. That's it for the update.
Okay, And can you remind us where where the other ones are, or is like Tim's?
Yeah, so I believe both of those have been submitted, both of Tim's have, and so they're working through, I think they've both been accepted by the state, so they'll be, scheduling for review. I suspect, given this calendar, it seems like it'll be the next quarter or possibly thereafter for those.
Fantastic.
But it'll be nice to have one on the docket for November.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
really
absolutely.
exciting.
Yeah, that's been a long time
Right,
coming,
Rebecca,
right?
so that's gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
Is she still there?
Yes, I'm very excited about it.
Yeah.
All right, okay, then we'll move on to updates and discussion on the DEI efforts. Under there, we have Indigenous Peoples' Day and Native American Heritage Month, which, if you didn't know, on Monday at 11 o'clock, that was Indigenous Peoples' Day. The city had a ceremony in the parking lot, and you might see the Ho-Chunk Nation flag flying on the pole proudly up there. It was a phenomenal event. I think there were about 50 people
It
who
was really cool. Very
so
cool.
we stood there in the rain, and the Ho-Chunk Nation was just there, hearing him speak and just how grateful they were for that acknowledgement was really awesome. I think, it was a goosebump moment, I felt.
Yeah.
So thanks, Peggy, for coming. I know you were there.
Yeah, I thought it was very moving, very meaningful.
It really was.
And I took a picture of the flag going up. It was just like, yeah.
Nice. Yes. Well, it was nice that
And
one, I think it was a couple of my son's friends, so a third grade class came over. And those kids, they got soaked, but they seemed to love it. They were jumping in puddles and getting even more wet, I'm sure several hours later, they maybe were regretting their decision, but at the moment they were
their
enjoying it.
parents were.
Yeah. So, anyone else have any comments on any DEI initiatives? All right, then we'll move on to item C, Landmarks Commission request for staff.
With the pagoda, I think we've got to start figuring out what our options are and kind of do some kind of analysis of what the pros and cons are for each. I mean, I think my preference, I think at this point, is to reconstruct. But I'm sure there are other things people want to suggest. And maybe, at what point, I'm not sure, but probably want to get some public input on that. But I think we've got to take the lead on that.
Absolutely, and that's something I think the PS are sort of gonna maybe give an opinion on Monday or as part of this. I think at least getting some ballpark numbers I think would be helpful for a restoration versus a replacement. I think that we have some of those from the previous information, but I think that could also help inform some of this as well. But certainly, I think as we think about possible steps and how this may move forward, the certificate of appropriateness for demolition, they are noticed publicly, but I think if there were to be subsequent, if for example, if there's maybe a redesign or a replacement that's involved, I certainly think public input and how that is portrayed would be very important. I think that's so that's just one example, as a way of engaging the public. But I think that there's absolutely opportunities to do that, and I think partnering with the Herald and things like that can be a good way to sort of reach broader, rather than just the legal, notifications and things like that. So,
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I think I mentioned to Doug that someone reached out to me, and it's someone who lives near that park, and said if we do decide, we are forced basically to get rid of the pagoda, that he would like to have it. And so I was thinking about a can of worms that could open. And so maybe along that line is a list of what are the options for that? Like, would a silent bidding process be allowable for something like that? Because, maybe it would allow us to raise some funds for whatever replaces the pagoda, or, and, He said he was entirely willing to restore it himself and he would install it in his front yard. I was like, all right.
Competition to the park then.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, you know, and that might not be the only request we get. So, yeah, we discussed that at that time too.
Yeah, I can look into that, just from how that may even work. I don't even know where to start with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Doug, this is Rebecca again. That might be a question for Attorney Cole.
That's
Yeah.
where I was gonna go.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
For sure.
yeah, I don't know precedents and liability, and there's plenty of
Yeah.
things that come to mind with that request.
Yes.
So
there
yeah,
are. And then if like we were to just get rid of it and, you know, and then how he sits with that. And what might result, so.
Yeah.
All right,
Well, that could be some kind of mitigation if we do have to take it down.
yes.
If it was to be taken away, would we have to bid that work out?
possibly. You know, I think on the previous, you know, back in September, it probably could have just been a change order with Joe Daniels, but I think now it would probably, I don't know if it's, it may be if it's below a certain price, you know, it may not need to be competitively bid, but certainly the roof project did need to be. So I would need to check into that, you know, based upon if it's, say, you know, a couple thousand or a $5,000 job or something. Is that something we can just directly contract, or do we still need to bid that? So I think we would, best practice, certainly want to get at least a couple anyway, just to make sure, you know, we're doing it efficiently. But I need to look, I'm not as familiar as that, with that as maybe colleagues in public works or something like that. So I'll look into that as to whether we would need to bid it.
I believe our policy is $15,000 and we bid.
Okay.
The reason I asked is whoever may want it could
Yes, there you go.
get it that way.
That's
That's
good. And then that will show how badly they want it.
and they can
Bring a
take it
team of
away.
Belgian horses in to the park. That would be exciting.
I'd like to know who his neighbors are gonna be. That's gonna have it in his front lawn. I mean, he's gonna have people visiting his site.
You charge admission.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yes. very
Photo
interesting.
taken next to it, right?
I have another question. With the archaeological survey of the park, is there a handle on that, when that might happen? I thought there was 25,000 in the budget to do that.
For San Damiano,
Yeah,
for San Damiano.
yeah.
And I know they've been working, that's all I've heard is they're working on getting an archaeological survey, but I have been hearing that for a couple months. So I'm curious about that as well.
That's the only update that I have. I'm not directly involved with that.
Rebecca's on the steering committee, maybe she would know. Rebecca, do you happen to have an update on the archaeological survey at San Damiano and how that's progressing?
I do not. We have not had our first meeting yet.
Okay,
Oh,
That's probably a park issue since it is considered a park right now.
oh, sure.
Yeah, I can check in. I'll check in with staff
Great.
and get an update that I can share in November.
that'd be great.
And just something to keep in mind, I know we're still dealing with the CLG grant we have. But if we were to apply for another CLG grant, they've raised the minimum from 25 to 50,000.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, if we wanted to look down the road,
We could do that, what, 3 times, 2 times?
there's no limit
Oh,
really.
there isn't. Oh, okay.
The only thing is they generally don't give you a
A
one
large,
grant after
yeah.
you've just gotten one.
Yeah.
But by the time we finish this one, it'll have been 2
Yeah,
years
yeah.
from the time we finished it.
Yeah.
So, but they, you know, the grants are usually due September, October, or I think they might have changed the date, so I'm not sure.
That sounds right.
But- Yeah, just something to keep, because doing all the parks would be something I think that would be very grantable. So not just San Damiano, but all the parks.
Mhm. So was that a pretty easy grant to write, the application, or how, now that you've got it written once, it's, you know, kind of do a file save as, but.
Yeah, I think because they kind of followed on from one another, they were fairly simple. I think switching to an archaeological may be a little different.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Just from kind of the scope and things like that. And there's some processes involved, but I think my only hesitation would be, I think making sure and maybe Rick can speak to this a little bit more, but making sure that we spend down what we have before we sort of apply it again. Just even from an optics perspective, I think would be important to kind of complete or to see through this one and then to proceed. So that would be my only sort of feedback with that. Maybe to sort of proceed through the national registers before then, you know, sort of considering the archaeological. I think that there is some scope within what we have currently, a little bit more scope than maybe I first thought to pivot there in terms of if there is maybe a smaller study or something like that. I feel like there may be a little bit of room for that in our current grant, but certainly to go for a full archaeological, I think would be a new undertaking. And it certainly wasn't the most intensive, but there were a couple steps and things like that. So.
Yeah, the grant administrator at the Historical Society said, good news is you got the grant. The bad news is you got the grant. So there's a lot of reporting, and so people sometimes don't know what they're in for. Oh, it looks like June 14th was the deadline this year. They moved it. So you don't have to worry about that till June.
All right. Okay, any other requests for staff?
Yes, I had a question. So I noted that the city of Monona, in the letters they're sending out and the options about sidewalks on Winnequa, is listing the block walls as being historic.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, is there some designation of historic that falls outside of the Landmarks Commission? And if so, what is it? And if the city considers those walls historic and is listing it as such, then should we look at that as a Landmarks Commission?
What's being considered historic?
The historic walls that run in front of about 4 homes on the west side of South Winnequa Road near Maywood.
It's kind of like a development marker, you know, it's like whoever, you know what I'm saying, how they do that? Yeah,
I'm not familiar with that, but I think I know the stone
yeah,
walls.
just like knee high or something, yeah.
Has someone said that they're historic?
The city is saying that they're historic in the documentation they're sending out. And so I'm just wondering where that falls, what a historic designation by the city means, or when the city considers something historic, what is that?
Is it a generic statement or is it a specific statement?
I'm not aware of this. So I would need to check in. I know this is more of a public works item. So I want to try and get some history on it before I comment. But yeah, I can certainly look into that, Brenda. As to, I know there's another upcoming meeting pretty soon. Is that right?
October 21st.
Okay.
For the road?
For the road, yeah, and so the historic walls are being used as the reason the sidewalk can't go on the west side of the street.
Oh.
So, you know, and one of the public works commissioners suggested we move the historic wall to the middle of the street. I don't know if you saw that from.
What would that do?
As a boulevard style, which I thought, oh, wow.
Is there gonna be a boulevard? No.
No, it's not, but it was one of the
Let's keep going
suggestions.
here.
And there just have been a lot of questions about the historic wall and like when was it built? And nobody seems to know and nobody seems to have these answers. And who declared it a historic wall?
Right.
So it would be amazing to get to the bottom of that. Someone down there must know.
Right, and that's my question, is if we're going to start using, if the city's using the word historic, then I think, I just would like to be aware of how something is designated historic that falls outside of the Landmarks Commission.
Yeah, sure.
It's an excellent point. Thank you for asking. Yeah, should be an exciting meeting, October 23rd.
Pagoda.
What a skating match. That's all I can say. All my life here, what a frickin' skating match.
But all I know about is that there are historic designations at each level of government.
Mhm.
We work
Oh,
with the
okay.
city ordinance. The state has some statutes,
Right.
and the federal government has some statutes. And since it's not listed in the National Register,
Right.
I don't think it's under state or national designation.
So it's a local.
And those, but the local has not been designated local,
No, because that would be by this commission,
right?
correct?
So I don't think there's any history of it being locally designated.
Yeah, so that's why,
Does it go in front of Owen bungalows?
No, it does not. It's, I think
House
it's
next to the-
possibly the one just to the north of that. It's, I believe it's 4 homes there and it runs.
Oh, there's no stone walls in front of bungalow?
No, I'm pretty sure there's not.
I don't
Okay.
think
It's
so.
not bungalow or the house immediately to the north.
Okay, so it's
Yes, I
maybe
think
the
it's
next
to
one.
west bungalow.
Okay.
Because once we designate bungalow on the National Register, then those, whatever walls might be there,
Right.
if there aren't any or
That's what I was
whatever,
wondering.
then those would be considered historic.
Yeah.
Or could be, depends on the
or at least to that
nomination.
review, yeah.
Yeah, it depends on whether it's called out in the nomination or not.
There are no walls at the front of the property at bungalow, and they have some walls on the side of the property, but not at the front.
Okay,
One of the property owners who has that wall in front of their home spoke at the public works meeting and mentioned that underneath the wall, there's actually a foundation that sticks out 6 inches beyond the wall.
Wow.
And so one of the challenges that he was talking about is the heavy equipment they're bringing in for the road has it going 3 inches up to the wall. And he said that's actually not possible because they're planning on moving the roadway over to the west, so they don't have to take down trees.
wow,
And it will be a meandering sidewalk that would go like up into yards around the trees. So that is a detail that people were surprised to hear and kind of an unknown at this point. So I believe the engineers are working on figuring that out. And that'll come, be discussed on October 21st. And that October 21st meeting is a public input meeting, so 6 o'clock, I believe. And I'm gonna guess it's once again gonna be at the municipal room at the library, because that room was packed at the last
So can
meeting.
you see that all online somewhere?
It was also virtual.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, so if you, yeah, it's great viewing.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I watched the Tour de France and how Europe uses those furniture. And the last year when I watched it, there was one that had, the little village they went through had like bunkers sticking out that were planters.
Yeah, yeah.
So that you could park between the planters, but they kept the people from, the speed.
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh, they're gonna now be, that kind of the concept I'm wondering that they're gonna go with.
Right now,
Yeah.
the recommendations, they were tabled.
Yeah.
It seemed the consensus was that none of the plans were acceptable to people.
Yeah, it's a
So
tough one.
It is, it's. a
But I
very
saw that
complex
this year,
stretch.
like I said, you see all that furniture that they throw out on that, and when I saw those things, and they were sticking out as wide as a car,
Wow.
as a parking space designator, but it kept people from widening that road and going faster.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, any other requests for Doug? Okay, Rebecca has a. Yes, we saw your comment, Rebecca, and I think Doug's gonna kind of fill you in here a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we have upcoming meetings. My computer just died. I have a little bit of battery left. November 10th and December 8th. Here we go, right on into the holidays, folks, sneaking up on us. And after that, can I get a motion to adjourn if no one has any other comments or things to discuss?
I move to adjourn.
Okay, second.
I'll say.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I know nobody's opposed, so. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thank you.
Good night.